You ready?
Let's do it.
Sweet. So, Lauren, appreciate you making the time to come onto my podcast, right? The purpose of my podcast from experience is I want to help people learn from other people's experiences because there's only two ways to get experience. You either have to go through it yourself or you're going to learn from somebody else's. So, I love some of this because I feel like it's a full circle and it for you and your life and your journey. So, let's jump back. Why real estate? What did you probably didn't dream about being a realtor, maybe you did. But
Yeah.
what was the impetus and how things get started?
Yeah. So, when I was in college, I got a summer internship that turned into a full-time job. So at 21 years old, I was making really good money. I was living with a bunch of friends and I had come to a point where I was like, well, if I'm paying this much money to live in German Village with friends, why don't I go buy a house that has extra bedrooms and have friends live with me and house hack, right?
Yeah.
So it was 2012. I had some money for a down payment. I started looking at houses. I actually got in contract on one, and it was a shit show. I mean, a complete, like, I had agreed to pay X amount of dollars. They came back. We were already in agreement. They came back and said, oh, there's a second mortgage. Well, it ended up being a short sale in 2012, which is not surprising, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And part of what I didn't know was that I was able to have my own representation as a buyer. So I was working with a listing agent who already had fiduciary to the seller, and I was kind of left to my own demise, right? So it was about 9 months we were in contract, and finally I was like, my lease is coming up. I have to figure out what I'm doing. I've got these other people who I was planning on living with me, so it's not just me that's in this mix anymore. So I had to terminate the contract. And looking back, I still get the Zillow updates on what that property is worth, and I wish I would have followed through with it. But you live and
Yeah,
you learn.
found a way.
So after that, I really became not obsessive, but like I kept questioning what happened, what could have been different, what did I do wrong, and that's when I really, a spark for real estate happened, because I'm like, man, how many other people in the history of real estate have gone through the same thing I've gone through and wasted time on an application, an inspection, an appraisal. I mean, I was probably in by $1,500, and then it all went south anyway. So
Wow.
that really sparked my interest. That was in 2012. I ended up buying my first house in 2015, so that stung a little bit, and I waited a little bit. And then it really took me having a back surgery, being miserable in a job that I hated, and having 8 weeks of sitting there and reflecting with myself on realizing I can't do this. Like, I was already dreading going back to work, and I had 8 weeks off for surgery. So I really got to a point where I was like, I got to figure out what I want to do with my life. And at that time I was 26 years old, and, I was 6 years into a really good job with really good benefits and pension, and, one of those 30 years in and then you're done type jobs. But I wasn't happy. I didn't feel challenged. I didn't feel fulfilled. So I kind of just took that time to reflect and figure out what I wanted to do. And like I said, my internship, my sophomore year, turned into a full-time job. So I took college part-time from then on. So what I did is I, got back into classes, finished my bachelor's degree, and quit my job and went back to bartending and restaurant service until I got, my feet out from underneath me. And what I really did was, kind of focus on, okay, if I had to fall back into this job or into whatever career, at least I have my bachelor's degree at this point, right? And I have experience in the restaurant and bartending world through college anyway. So I literally graduated with my bachelor's degree on a Sunday, and I started my real estate classes on Monday morning. And yeah, right. And it took me 3 weeks to get my classes done. And I basically just told myself, like, sink or swim, you got to figure it out. And so I did. And here we are 7 years later.
Nice. How deep was the water? And what I mean by that is a lot of the time people are like sink or swim. And I guess I'll use myself as an example. So I started as a title insurance representative in 2013, and I was single, and it was going to make enough money that I could pay my rent, right, with the base salary. And, a lot of people say like it takes about a year to finally make it, right? So I grinded it for a year. I actually made it. And then I did that. I went on to be in that field for 7 years. But in the beginning, if I didn't make it, I feel like I had a longer runway. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
when you decided to do this, how long was your runway?
So here's the thing is I had set myself up for success. So like I said, in 2015, I bought a 4-bedroom house. I had friends living with me and the mortgage was covered. So I didn't
Were
have
you cash
to,
flowing?
I was cash flowing, yes.
Okay.
I didn't have to worry about, I'm going to have to foreclose on my house if I don't do this. I'm going to lose my car if I don't do this. So I had that sort of backbone. But I also, like I said, was bartending and serving part-time to make enough money, even if
Right.
even if all my friends on one day decided, hey, we're all moving out, I was making enough money there to support myself, right?
Okay.
Um,
And did you have anything saved at this point?
no, I mean, I had my retirement, but
Oh,
I didn't
looks like
have
you froze
like,
slightly. Maybe that's
yeah,
just me.
I was cash flowing and spending. I mean, I was a 26-year-old punk. You don't remember being 26?
Sorry, it froze for one quick second. Jump back 2 seconds.
Yeah, I said, no, I wasn't saving anything. I was a
Okay.
26-year-old who was making money and, had a house and I had a nice car and
Okay. So you had the income, right? You didn't have the
yes,
savings, but you had the income to probably support you through that. And yeah, if you lose one roommate tenant, right, then you can kind of replace them. So okay, so you had a little bit longer runway, and you were single.
I was single. I was about to be married in
Okay.
2017. Yeah.
Okay. All
But
right.
also, it was totally different back then because I think I spent like 135,000 on my first house. So my mortgage was like $800, $900.
But what was your income?
Well, with my job, I was making about 47. But then when I went to bartending, I was making, a couple $100 a night here and there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and it always fascinates me because I hear people bring up the argument. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like houses, used to cost $50,000," and I'm like, "Yeah," and people didn't make as much money back then,
Yeah.
right? So I
I
feel
was
like
making good money.
you were making good money. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just curious about that because I feel like for a lot of people looking to get in this business, you know what? I'll use myself again as an example. Is once we moved out here to Columbus, right? My wife's a new resident, right? So she doesn't make doctor money yet. Okay, guys, she's a slave right now. Before she was paying to be a slave, at least now she's a paid slave. Okay, she doesn't make a ton of money. So me deciding to transition into origination from recruiting and being in the corporate stuff was like, okay, well, how long can I make my runway, right? Because I'm I'm doing something different now, right? We've got 2 kids, about to have a third. We have our rental property back in Orange County. Now we have a new house out here. So we structured it a little bit differently. And the reason I bring this up is I think that a lot of people want the career that you have, right? They want to emulate you, Lauren. And I think they also have to be realistic sometimes about how long can you create a runway for because results may also vary. And
Right.
it
Well,
depends on your mentors, your circumstances, the training, the opportunities. So we're going to talk about team in a little bit, but sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I think too, results may vary because you literally have to be uncomfortable or you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you're not willing to push yourself outside of that comfort zone, it's very difficult to be successful in this. And what you do today doesn't show up for 60, 90, maybe 120 days. If you get a buyer that you find in an open house today and they have credit issues or they haven't been at their job for 2 years or, they have another house to sell before they can buy again. It's not I'm writing a contract tomorrow. You have to nurture them. You have to go find what they want. You have to help them through the process. And that's where a lot of people, don't understand too, is like, even if I go pick up 2 clients today, it might be September or October before they close.
Oh
But
yeah.
I have to eat in September and October too, So you got to but with real estate, one of the problems that we see is like people get so busy, they're doing this, right? I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. And then everything closes and they're back to the bottom. And then they got to build up that momentum again, right? So
Yeah.
to keep it kind of plateaued, even when you're busy, you still have to lead generate. You still have to be doing the things that you need to be doing. And that's where it kind of compounds. And then you're super busy, but at least it's, you have a projected every month I'm closing X amount of deals or making X amount of dollars.
Yeah. A good process will probably help you forecast a lot better.
Yeah.
Um, Before I jump back here, just a quick heads up. if your microphone, I don't know if it's that you're touching your microphone or tapping your table, but it just makes a little noise when you do that. So just a heads up. Yeah, that
Oh,
sound, whatever that is, that's the little thump,
don't want
thump,
me to play
thump.
the drums?
Not
Here, I
on,
think
not on
it's
the
my.
podcast.
I
I
have,
know that everybody's enjoying
I
it,
have a
but
fresh Diet Coke. It's probably that. I'll move that.
you're good. So I circled this because I feel like, again, the premise of this podcast is from experience, and you were literally taught by failure.
Mhm. My own failure.
In your for your first property in 2012, when you went into it, the experience you got from that, the a lot of people talk about how, real estate, mortgage, eventually this is just going to be completely obsolete and only time will truly tell. Personally, I believe that. I think elite agents and mega teams will continue to win more and more and more, especially as fintech and other organizations make the barrier to entry so high. Again, new agents can't create a long enough runway to get into it and then create consistency and then get those closings, right? They have unrealistic goals coming in. So let's talk about lack of process. Where'd you learn your process? Like what was the environment you kind of came into where you feel like you kind of, oh, I'm getting the hang of this, or you picked something up from somebody and it started to make more sense to you?
Yeah. So I joined Keller Williams. That was my saving grace. Is they are the most educational, new agent friendly. I had a productivity coach who his job was to take the new agents and make us successful. And we had classes, and it was fun because we had other people who were in our class, and we would all want to beat each other. And there was friendly competition, but also there was support, and there was people who, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can we kind of mastermind together, or can I call my mentor? Or so I got lucky in that sense that I chose the right brokerage that had the right person to put me in a position to make me successful. um, there's so many people out there who I see, even I co-op with, who are new agents, and it's just very apparent that they don't have anyone who is helping coach them through it. And it breaks my heart for them because it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you need to have someone, because here's the thing is, when you get your license, they don't teach you how to write a contract. They don't teach you how to open a door. They don't teach you how to go prospect for clients. They don't teach you any of that. They teach you the laws. They teach you the finances. They teach you the fair housing and ethics and all the important things of being a realtor, but they don't teach you how to be a realtor.
Mm-mm. How would somebody know? Because are you still with the same brokerage?
I've been with the same brokerage my entire career. Yep.
Okay, so you're with KW Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you hit the lottery, because I know there are. I would say that even in the mortgage space, there's good companies, but then usually leadership within areas varies because you might have different regions. As an example, I guess I'll just say ABC Mortgage, right? If they have a Western and then Eastern divisions, right? And then there's within those divisions regions, there's going to be separate leadership operations teams, underwriters, that it all comes down to how the recipe is made. So
Right.
not all cakes are equal. And in KW's world, and I guess I'm not trying to single out KW, because I think even within EXP, Berkshire Hathaway, again, there's different leadership and different results that are going to vary from some of these different groups trying to make a recipe, right? Produce a product.
Yep.
How would you say somebody should know? Because one of my philosophies was to always take the meeting, right? Like always, talk to your peers, always talk to, like, if somebody at another brokerage, right? The team leader or whoever wants to meet with you, it can't hurt. You're probably going to learn something. But what would you say is your philosophy on how do you know if you're in the right place?
Again, for me, it comes down to culture. A lot of good human beings around me means more than a lot of things in my life, especially because toxicity can really take it down too. But for me, I mean, I have taken meetings. I've been recruited. I've sat with the EXPs and the Remaxes, but there's nothing that has come up in my career that has been worth giving up what I've built with KW in the last 7 years. And I think that there's a big difference in support classes, things like that a lot of big brokerages offer, of, hey, here, let's have a time where some big agents or mega agents or team leaders or successful agents or whatever you want to call it come back and teach and give back to the new agents. Which is why I do that as often as I'm asked. Usually, as long as I'm in town, I'll help, because I remember being that agent 7 years ago. and not knowing what I was doing. And I had, amazing veteran agents in my office who took the time. I mean, I can remember I was sitting in the office one time and I had no idea what to do for an open house. And, my mentor was available to me. My broker was available to me. There were a couple of other mega agents who were very intimidating to me in my career in the beginning, who now I'm really good friends with. And, we bounce each other's ideas off of each other now, because it's like real estate's ever changing. And like, no two contracts are the same. Something different is going to pop up, but you want to be surrounded by people who it's community over competition. They're going to take my phone call and help me out because they know I would do the same for them. And it's not well, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not, there's just no like.
Yeah, people have different mindsets, different approaches, mentalities, right? Like, and I definitely agree with the point about we need more good human beings, right? I understand that stages of life can play a role sometimes in whether or not somebody's able to pour back into other people, right? And then I think that there's also personalities where people just aren't, they're not good team players, right? And I fervently believe that my way is the best way. And we're going to get to that here in a second, right? Which is if we focus on helping people become more successful homeowners, then, well, as Zig Ziglar would say, right? If you help enough other people get what they want, you can have as much of whatever you want. And it also, not only does it feel really good, I think it leads to a lot of business, a lot more business. I would say the same thing about camaraderie, a collaboration. Like, it can only lead to opportunities.
Right.
And if you're very short-sighted, then you just can't see that. And I get it. If maybe you're just currently in a stage of life where there's just too many clouds, and you just can't. I think it would make me kind of an asshole if I were to tell somebody else they're doing it wrong. I just think that, sure, some ways are different, but I do believe that there are better ways, but perfect doesn't exist. Go ahead.
Right. And I think too, a lot of it, there is, I mean, even the mega agents in our team or in our office, we all run our teams completely differently. There are some people who their agents are in the office from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, cold calling every single day. We don't do that. And like you said, there are many ways to get to the same outcome. And it's just a matter of like, for me, I need to be authentically me for me to get energy in helping other people, which helps, it's like that ripple effect, right? If I'm helping you and you're helping me and that sends that little ripple, then we're both going to be energetically aligned into helping more people along the way, right? Instead of closing the door, closing everything off and just saying like, hey, this is me and my team and we're going to eat and I don't really care about anybody else. You know what I mean?
100%. I think back sometimes to when I was a title rep and then when I transitioned from title insurance into mortgages and reflecting back on that moment, like who I feel I was.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes say I feel like I'm 4 times the human being, right? The man, the husband, the father, the professional, because I did surround myself with better. I leveled up my 5 people, right? Like I leveled up who my mentors were and I got exposed to more. And it's all up here, right? Like to be a successful loan originator, to be a successful originator, you can't give somebody else your brain, right? Everything all those experiences that you've had have come from time. So let's do you have any other thoughts on that? I don't know. I wanted to shift it to helping our clients.
I think my last thought on that would be, with newer agents, newer loan originators, new anybody. I mean, just find someone who's going to allow you to shadow them. That's going to be the fastest way to figure out the lingo and how to have conversations and how to have hard conversations and things like that. Because why reinvent the wheel? I mean, find someone as success leaves clues. Find someone who's successful and shadow them. And, kind of like you said for your wife, like she wasn't getting paid or now she is getting paid, but you have to put your time in if you want to get to where you want to go,
Yeah, and her industry, I would say, is very much it's forced, right? Like there's no other option, right? In our businesses, we literally get to create what we want to do, and nobody's making us do it, right? It's like you've got to, do it yourself, and that's where process and what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who you're doing it with actually matter, especially in our worlds. But for my wife, she'll get there, right? She'll make the big bucks at some point.
Well, discipline and accountability are 2 big ones in our world too. If you're not disciplined, no one's forcing you to get up and do what you need to do. The accountability of having someone, usually if like, for example, Thomas, if I'm like, hey, Thomas, let's go to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning. Right? If I know that I need to be there for you, I'm probably going to go. But if I'm just telling myself I'm going to go to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning, I'm going to be tired. I'm probably going to roll over a little bit and be like, hit the snooze button because,
Yeah.
but that you have to be disciplined and accountable in real estate because no one is forcing you to do anything unless you're on a team and they do have rules and regulations and things like that. But,
And you'll get kicked off the team. But most teams actually have very loose rules, right?
yep.
Participation is optional.
Well, and I think, maybe that is our downfall of our team is we are very loose and we want you to follow your dreams and hit your goals. I'm not telling you need to go sell 50 houses to be on this team because if you have family, another job, other hobbies, and you don't want to grind like I grind, I can't make you want that, so yeah, I mean, it's a very fine line.
100%. All right. So let's talk about our clients and what we're doing to help them become more successful. Because that's something I'm passionate about, trying to change the mortgage industry, and you're trying to change the real estate industry. So you talked about how you used to have a team, a bigger team. What was the height of the team? How many agents did you have on the team?
I think 8 was the biggest we ever got.
Okay. And so you learned something from this experience, and I'd love to dive into how you learned it, right? What you learned, but how you learned it. Like if you can think back to maybe instances and moments where it was like, oh shit, right? Like you found clarity on your vision and goals for where you want to take your business, how you want your life to look, the lifestyle, and your mission. So your mantra, right? Your mission to change the real estate industry stems from wanting to change family trees, right?
Build generational wealth and change family trees. Yep.
Okay. So when did you start building the team, and then walk me through where you kind of ended up?
So if you want to take it way back, I was a solo agent who got pretty busy and immediately had a friend of a friend who wanted to get her license. And I was like, sure, you can just join me, whatever. I had no systems. I had no processes. I had no leadership. I was maybe a year into the business myself. So,
but you could plug this person into Keller Williams and the ecosystem there, right? So they were getting that nourishment in that new agent way from there, and you.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, it was fine, but I had sat through all of these classes that said, when you get busy, don't hire a buyer's agent, hire an admin. And I didn't listen, and I brought on this buyer's agent, and all it ended up making me do was work double time because now I'm working with my clients and I'm helping teach this person how to work with their clients, so that was my first fail at a team, was not listening to all of the successful people who told me to hire an admin first, because I was too scared to commit to, I have to bring someone on and pay a salary. Like I can live with me failing. I can't live with me failing, which is causing somebody else's family to hurt. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified. So after that, I went and found a way to hire a transaction coordinator who you just pay them at the end of the contract. It's not a salary, it's per deal. And that was really an eye-opener for me to free up my time, streamline the process, which ended up making it better for my clients because if I'm out on showings, they're not waiting a couple hours to get an email back or get some clarification or anything like that. The TC was taking care of all of that. And it really gave me leverage to go out and find more clients because I wasn't bogged down in the paperwork. So that was the first, so
that was like an eye-opening experience where you're like, oh shit, there's a better way. And this is leverage.
Yeah, for sure. And then the second one was, Jen and I quickly found out that we were competition for each other. In the LGBTQ community here in Columbus is very small. So we had a lot of people who, I would be with them on Friday and she would have them on contract on Sunday. Or we would see that they were using a third party because they didn't want to upset either one of us by choosing the other. So we really quickly found out that we were competition for each other. And that's when we started to have the conversation of, if you can't beat them, join them type thing. We should start a team. And we were told
at the same company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so she was also KW Classic.
Yep, she was at KW Classic at the time. She had.
This could have ended very differently if she was at a different company, I guess, or you were.
Yeah. Well, I think at the time she had 2 agents and an admin, maybe that was part of her team. But I mean, it took us a solid year, maybe a little bit more, because we didn't even know each other, let alone know if we liked each other, let alone know if we could work well together. So what we did was we took some marketing with Columbus Navigator. It was like a, I don't know, publication in Columbus at the time. I think they're still around, but and what we did was we split cost to market, and we marketed that you could basically get 2 agents for the price of one, right? You'd have 2 agents working for you. It wouldn't cost you anything else, whether you're selling, buying, and just to try to get our feet wet of, can we work together? Let's co-op a few deals together and make sure, workflow, your team, me, everybody gets along, things like that. And we did. It was a year, maybe a little bit more. And ego was involved, of course, because we're like, who's going to have the name and who's going to be the name and lights and who's going to be the rainmaker? Because everybody else had one person who was the head of the team, and we both wanted to be the head of the team. So we went to Cincinnati in March of 2019. There was about 10 of us from our group. It was a big Keller Williams convention of career visioning and, finding the people that you need to hire and things like that. It was like a 3-day event. And so we went there, and one of the tasks that they had us do was write down everything that you're good at or enjoy doing, and then write another list of everything that you're not good at or don't enjoy doing. And when we did that, we looked at each other's lists and we're like, oh, shit. Everything that she hated was my strong suit. Everything I hated was her strong suit. So we sat there.
It's probably why you guys even started working together in the first place. You didn't really realize it, perhaps, but
yeah. And it is finding, leveraging what you don't enjoy doing and finding someone who does it better than you anyway, So that night in Cincinnati, after that convention, is when we realized, okay, maybe this is what's going to be best for everything. And we decided that we were going to go home and we were going to talk to an attorney, a CPA. And we did. We sat down with an attorney and basically built out the divorce of the business before we even signed up for business together. So we broke it down so much that she was like, well, Lauren eats out at lunch more often. How's that going to be accounted for? Or, I'm bringing this much into the database. She's only bringing this much to the database. What happens if it doesn't work? Who's going to split? You know what I mean? Because to start a partnership and then dissolve a partnership could have quite easily
plan the divorce before you get married.
Right. And everyone told us partnerships don't work. There was only, I think, 4 or 5 partnerships throughout the city anyways.
Really?
So we were told, pick one of you to be the
And when was this? Was this
2019?
19. Okay.
Yep. So we joined the team and we took her team and myself and merged it all together and became LKW Home Team in June, maybe July of 2019.
Okay. All right. So 10 people, you said? So there's 8 agents?
That was the height of what we got. So at that time, she had 2 agents on her team plus an admin.
Mm-hmm.
And we merged myself into that.
Okay. Oh, just you into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so at what point did some of the agents in the process not maybe necessarily work with your vision and goals? Because if you had 8, was that before this or after this?
So I inherited her team, basically, right? Because we were partners and she had these people with her. And when I really started to realize that maybe there was some sort of something change needed to happen was when I was sitting down with one of her agents, and I'm not going to name names, but I was sitting down with one of her agents helping write a contract, and they were complaining through the entire thing, how annoying it was. And I'm like, you realize that writing this contract is how you make money in this business, right? So it was at that point that we kind of dialed it back, and I was like, look, we really should, think about culture and think about who's on the team and think about, because I'm spending my time and energy to help you. And
the key word there is energy.
Yeah. And you're Debbie Downer about having to write a contract for a client to help them get a house, and B, this is how you get paid, So that was really kind of an eye opener for me of like, wow, there are a lot of different personalities in this industry, and not everyone, again, wants to do what I do, and that's fine. Some days I don't even want to work like I work, but I do because there's a bigger vision.
Yeah, bigger vision, obviously. We can't make the impact in the client. If we can't be good for 30 days, nobody's going to want to work with us after the transaction. for the next, 10, 20, 30 plus years. And yeah, that's interesting to me. There are teams out there where they basically write your contracts for you, right?
Well, you have to be licensed to write a contract. So I hope that whoever's
Well,
writing it.
yeah, they have someone who does a lot of the contract writing, and then I think the agents, like, they do their part within the contract, but somebody else is making it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm also a control freak, so I write my own contracts.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
I
Make sure your license is on the line, right? You should care, right? Like, I'm all for scalability. I think that there's definite, if you don't know how the cake is made, right, then you can't even quality check, right? You can't QC your
Yeah.
team members or anybody that's helping you throughout this process if you don't know how it's actually done. So
Right.
yeah, that's that. I can see how that's a bit of an eye opening as far as how tight is our velvet rope.
Right. And I think too, there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's so many different things that are happening. Do they have to sell their home first? Are we closing? Are they having possession after the fact? Because if they are, we got to make sure they're keeping utilities and insurance and everything. And you know what I mean? Like there's so many different things that I personally have never given up contract writing because I am very particular about how I write my contracts, to make sure that, it's very crystal clear and there's no like gray muddy area on 7 days after closing. Okay, well, it's 7 days after closing at 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. because those are two very different things. You know what I mean? Like, so I've just always been very particular in that. But again, I understand that I am psychotic in control, so it's
Well,
fine.
you used the word earlier, obsessed, right? So you're just very technical, and you that's one of your strengths, isn't it? The technical stuff.
I like to call it passionate, but yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm the analytical nerd that has spreadsheets for
You
basically
like
everything.
spreadsheets too? Oh my gosh, we should get our spreadsheets out
Oh,
sometime.
we moved into our new office in December. And it wasn't until last week that we got all of our like boards up that have like in contracts coming soon, the whole nine. And I was very happy when those boards got put up because that's my baby. That's my little safe space, is looking at my spreadsheets and knowing exactly, because again, someone has to be in control of figuring out, are we ahead of last year? Are we behind last year? What's going on? Where's the return on any investments that we're making? I mean, someone's got to be in control of that. And if you're not in it almost daily, things can go awry rather quickly.
Yeah, well, that's a separate topic, is knowing your numbers,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of people do leave it to chance. And you talked about it previously, were the peaks and the valleys, right? Because they're not consistently prospecting. And if you don't know your numbers and you don't know the metrics and the ways in which that you business develop, right, and you create new opportunities, then failing to plan is planning to fail.
Right.
So
And I mean, there's a lot of agents who do pay for leads every month, but looking at a spreadsheet and saying, okay, 80% of our business comes from our sphere. Well, why are we out spending money on leads if we could just love on the people who already know, like, and trust us? That's where most of our referrals and past clients and things come through anyway. So, I mean, that's where we switched from, paying for leads for the team when the team shrunk a little bit. Now we just really focus on our past clients and loving on them and making sure, for Valentine's Day, they got a free Starbucks, or if they're, getting married or having a baby or something, they're getting something from us that says congratulations, because we're here for you and with you for life if you'll have us. I mean, we want to see you succeed and we want to be a part of every single journey, whether that's upsizing, downsizing, moving out of state, anything real estate. We want people to think of us. So
what is some of the data? Because I forget, when you and I were talking at one point, I think it was actually our first phone call. We went really deep, even on the first time we met, Lauren.
yeah.
What were some of the things that you prepare for your clients? I think that you individually for your clients prepare. It's you probably know what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So every January we go back through everyone we sold the year before. We send them their settlement statement. With their settlement statement, we give them voter registration to make sure that they're set up for their new house. I mean, it's things that can fall through the cracks that most people don't even think about. And it's so funny because I'll have people text me and be like, so my CPA says, and I'm like, already in the mail. It's already on its way to you. And they're like, how do you think of all these things? And it's just a system and a process that we put into place years ago, that it's a well-oiled machine. When January comes, everybody from the year before gets XYZ because this is probably tucked away somewhere, or they threw it away thinking it wasn't important. But it's our job to make sure that they know, hey, all your mortgage interest is a write-off. Sometimes you're closing, you know what I mean? Like if you sold and bought, you need to know what your profit was for taxes and things like that. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to register to vote, because you might live in a new county or a new township, or you know what I mean? Whatever that looks like. and people are very appreciative of it. But some people don't even realize what it is, and it gets tossed, and that's okay too. But we truly try to help in every single sense of the way of here's what moving period entails and what you need to do.
100%. There's a lot of people, I think, that they'll, and that's better than, geez, gosh, 99%, 99.99% of agents, right? Because most people after the transaction, they're not really there for the customer.
Mhm.
Nobody says this out loud. This is the truth.
Mhm.
After you close your transaction, most of the time it's good luck. And come back to me if you ever if you have any thoughts about buying, selling, right? Or have family members or friends that want to buy or sell, right? Send me your referrals.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will then market, right? It's like, okay, like, yeah, we want past client, re-engagement. Our industry sucks at this, right? I think it's less than 15%. And somebody showed me an NAR study. I think it was maybe plus or minus 20%. So whatever the real number is, it's still horrible.
Yeah.
And it's because we're just marketing to them as an industry, right? And people wonder, why didn't they call me? Or, that's because you're not actually helping them. You're sending them marketing or, pies on Thanksgiving. And those things are great. But what else could we really do that helps the customer become more successful? A simple thing, I'll just point to one thing, right? Is making sure that they have life insurance. Because that's one of those things you just said it, right? Like, how do you remember all these things, right? But people are just so busy with their daily life and they're just going through the motions. They know they should have it, right? Maybe they don't, which is even worse. But then they just never get around to it. And then in the tragic event that something happens, that's one of the easy things that we as an industry could do for our clients to protect them. But nobody considers that their job, right? We're not insurance agents, right? But at the end of the transaction, what do you know about your client? You know everything, right? You know where they're planning to send their kids to school. You know where ultimately they want to be. Maybe they moved here to Columbus, but they want to be back right in California at some point. It's like, cool. How can we help you with that? But nobody considers that their job. And most Americans don't have a financial planner, and a lot of them do their own taxes as well. So they're not really empowered with good information. And this is just true, even though it's about my industry as well, is the perception the consumer has of lenders, right? Loan originators and even realtors, right? Is a lender is only as good as their rate. And a realtor is kind of always going to try and sell you a house, right? They're going to try and convince you to list or to buy. So most people don't want to talk to us.
Right. I think,
And they're, yeah, go ahead.
I think at some point realtors were worse than used car salesmen in like surveys and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's the
scary.
difference is there are a lot of agents out there who do that. They are very transactional. They close and that's it. Right. But I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've walked through a listing appointment even, and I'm like, do you have to sell this house to buy? No. Okay. Well, have you considered renting it? Because this could help you build passive income. This could help you. I mean, we all know Columbus.
And this is something you do a lot personally, I know. So you can obviously help a lot of people with this too.
Right. And that's the thing is like we do Airbnb, we have long-term rentals, we flip houses, we're doing all of these different things. So we can speak from experience that if I walk through your house for a listing appointment, and this has happened before, and I'm like, hey, if you can handle this, if you want to be a landlord, I'll teach you how to be a landlord. I'll help you get in touch with someone who can write you a lease and things like that.
So talk about the word value, right? Because a lot of people are like, value is an overused word. Well, how about mentoring your client into being a landlord?
Yeah.
Gee.
I mean, I've helped them set up LLCs. I've helped them get EINs. And at the end of the day, they're like, I thought you were going to sell my house. I'm like, it's better for you. Like, forget me for a second. It's better for you to keep this as an appreciating asset that's going to cash flow because you bought it 10 years ago. Your mortgage is next to nothing and it can rent for X amount of dollars. And there's people who just don't want to do that. They don't want to be a landlord, and that's fine too. In those cases, sometimes, we'll just buy the house and have it as our own rental. But that's just adding value in the sense of thinking outside the box, getting creative, and making sure that you have the client's best interest in mind. And we've got situations too, even in the past where a client is looking for something and can't find what they're wanting, but they don't have the funds to flip it. I'm like, okay, well, if we find something that does need flipped, maybe we can buy it and you can choose what you want to do. And then we'll just sell it back to you. The numbers have to make sense for everybody, of course, but that's adding value and thinking outside of the box of, wow, my real estate agent can go find me something that needs some love, buy it. I can make it what I want. And as long as we're all in agreement of like, here's what the appraised value is going to be, here's what all of these costs are going to be, and I'm not trying to make $1 million off of it. I obviously need to make it worth our time. But I mean, who else is doing that? No one. Who's creating their own inventory? No one. And I think that that's just the difference in if your clients are getting frustrated and burnt out and writing offers and not getting what they want, like it's our job to make sure that they're getting exactly what they want, however we have to do it.
I love that. Outside of the box as well as about them,
Always
because
about.
that's one of my favorite questions or favorite points I've heard Ryan Grant, who's one of the founders of Neo, and actually the guy I joined when I said, screw this, I'm going to get out of title and I want to work in the mortgage industry is, look, I'm not going to try and convince you to do a loan, right? What I want you to do is have all the information and confidence you need to then go make a confident decision. And if that's buy, great. If it's not, great. But I'm not going to try and convince you to do something, because the question most people try really hard to focus on. And again, we know there's a lot of good people in our industries as well, right? Like we'll hold out hope. But I think a lot of people are just focused on can you buy a house? That's not a very good question to focus on. The answer steers you in a particular direction, right? Because it's not really about them, it's just can. The question we should be trying to answer is should. Should you do this, right? Or even must. Now, again, not everybody has the goal of being a real estate mogul like you, right? And that's okay, right? The stages of life play a role in that. And sometimes we just can't take on more, or we want to, let's keep it safe. Personalities, right? Not everybody has the personality or the capacity to do some of these things. But again, if we're focused on should, we'll get a completely different outcome.
And I think too, that's
Wanted to, let's see. So what are some of the other things you're doing right now for your past clients, right? We want to change family trees.
yeah.
Because
So
that's a slogan, by the way.
it should be. No, our
It should literally be right below your sign.
our slogan is I don't know if I can say it on this podcast.
If there's an F word, it's okay.
Our slogan is fuck up the system.
Fuck up the system. Let's go.
I have it on my wall. It's our Wi-Fi. We have it everywhere.
I mean, that's a rabbit that I could chase into the hole of, because you asked the question because you're trying to be polite. But if we're just honest about who we are,
yeah,
we're going to attract more of the people who actually are our ideal clients.
Yeah.
And if there's other people that have a problem with us and they have this false perception of who we really are, that's where I see a lot of agents, loan officers, professionals make a mistake, is they're pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
They're trying to emulate Gary Vee so hard. I'm just picking on Gary Vee, that they literally try and sound like him or who, fill in the blank. And now you're not even really you anymore. And you're going to lower your ceiling. Because you're chasing all the business, right? I actually heard somebody say this recently, and again, I don't think there's multiple ways to do things and be successful. I personally don't think that being a chameleon, right? Or I obviously think we should be able to adapt to personalities. I don't think we should be pretending to be somebody else.
Yeah. And I think not being authentic, people can see right through that, right? So if I'm sitting there pretending to be somebody I'm not, or, like, for example, I like working with the people I work with because I can show up in whatever I'm branded everywhere. You know what I mean? Like if I'm out and about and I have the top off the Jeep and a backwards hat, if I can't walk into a listing appointment with you as I am, we're probably not a good fit, And here's the thing with us too is
again, it's not that you can't, right?
Right.
Different question we're trying to answer.
Right. And that's the difference too, is like there's a lot of people who, I see scrolling TikTok or whatever, that their agents who are like, oh, you're paying 100% interest to rent. And you are 100%. But not everyone is going to be a good homeowner. Not everyone is going to, like some people,
might not be ready
for them to rent. Whether your credit's not there, whether you don't have the down payment, whether you don't have the fallback to if your HVAC goes out or your roof goes out. I mean, not everyone is going to be ready to buy at any given moment. You got to sit down and think about what is best for that client and coach them through that.
I was just talking with my buddy Drew, who's in the Bay Area, and we were talking about an FHA client that I have, where it's pretty clear. I think that there's potentially an exception to this, right? But again, a lot of people focused on can she buy, right? It's like, yeah, I think we can make this work. She's going to have to pay off some of these debts, but let's go back to should you buy? If you're literally at 57%, right? Back end DTI, is this a smart move for you? Because I don't want you to end up getting foreclosed on, right? And a lot of people would say this person can buy a house. Let's do it.
Well, I think too, it's a matter of, I've had clients who they feel trapped in their house because they have a good interest rate, because their mortgage is really low. And they're like, well, if we go buy, a house that our family really needs, because they have multiple children now and multiple animals now and things like that, they need more space. They're like, well, our mortgage would be $700 more a month. Okay, well, let's sit down. Let's sit down and look at your car payments, your student loan payments. And if we can use some of the profit from the sale of this house to pay down
Eliminate those debts.
$1,100 a month.
Let's do some debt consolidation. Yeah.
Exactly. If we can
Lauren,
pay
most
off
most lender, a lot of lenders don't even talk about this, but you're talking about this
for sure, because they think that they're so terrified that they can't go afford this new house, and they can't. They just have to get creative in doing it, because who can take on an extra $700 a month in payment on top of everything else? Not very many people. But if you're wiping out $1,100 worth of payment and now your mortgage is $700, you're still plus $400, $500 a month, then that makes sense all day long.
But most people, you're right, are focused on the monthly mortgage payment because, again, they're not taught this, right? Nowhere in our society is financial literacy taught. Is they're focused to look at the monthly payment of the mortgage, and then they're trying to compare everything to that versus having an advisor like us say, hey, let's look at the whole picture, right? Like, let's paint a picture and let's see what it looks like. Because if we look at your net payments, right, which means we have to dive a little deeper.
Right.
And we have to ask some other questions. And most people don't consider that their job, right? Like, what? Like,
but
I don't
you
want
have
talk
to
about
get them to trust you, because you're asking them about their personal finances, and that's a hard topic for a lot of people to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it also is a good indicator if somebody's not willing to talk about some of these things, then there could be not a red flag, right? But it's like I always like to give the analogy of the gap versus the chasm. So I think I made this up. So this is maybe a Thomas Meister original. I don't know.
All right, go for it.
I'm all for trying to have conversation and dialogue with somebody if there's a gap in our thinking, right? Because if there's a gap, it's like, okay, let's talk about it and let's figure out how we can get closer to each other and bridge this gap. But then sometimes you end up talking with somebody and you realize, there's a chasm, right? Like there's just this massive chasm between us. And a lot of people just sit there and they don't want to admit it. And they just stay in the situation, right? They keep trying to talk to this person to convince them. And the reality is this person is better off. Like, sorry, dude, like I don't have enough time and energy, right? To help if I had infinite time and energy, I would help. I'm a people pleaser, right? Like I would pour into every human being as much as I possibly could if I had infinite time and infinite energy, but I don't. I have responsibilities to my family, to my team, to my other clients. So nothing personal. I just think that you should stay this course. I hope that over time we grow closer together, but it's not my job to convince you, right? I retired from trying to change people a long time ago.
Well, and that's the
Right.
thing is if like you said, I mean, you can lead a horse to water, right? You can't make them drink it. I can show you ways that you could wipe out debt. I can show you ways that you can invest now and have $100,000 in equity in the next 5 years. I can show you, but if you are so skeptical or don't believe me or don't trust me, I have to move on. I have to go find someone else who is willing and able to take the help that I'm willing to get. And I think too, there's a lot of people who, like you said, in some situations it doesn't make sense. And that's okay too. I mean, if I sit down with you and I'm like, all right, you don't have any equity to pay off these things. So yes, it truly would be adding an additional $700 to your cost every month. That doesn't make sense. But if I can sit with you and show you ways that, oh, by the way, now you're completely debt free except for your mortgage anyway, that's going to make your interest rate go, or your credit score go up, which is going to make your interest rates cheaper for anything else you want down the line, which is also going to say,
Yep.
If you need a third row car, now you have these cars paid off, you've got some equity in those, you can go move, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many moving parts, and it's simple, not easy, right?
Yeah, nothing easy in life, right? Easy, simple things, right? How's that saying go? Good things aren't cheap, cheap things aren't good. And same thing could apply to obviously effort, right?
Yeah.
If it's easy, it's probably not going to yield as good a result as it could.
Yeah. But I
So,
think the thing that breaks my heart the most is that so many people just don't take the chance because they don't understand it. Because we were never educated in it, because they don't feel empowered to make their own decisions. So they sit in the safe space, which is where they're at.
100%. Lauren, thank you so much for making the time. I want to be respectful of your time. We're a little bit over here. So, is there any other thoughts or feedback that you would have right now before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me right now is just talk to your realtor, talk to your lender, make sure that you know all of your options and feel empowered to make the decisions for you, because don't let the news and the media scare you that rates are so high or the boom's coming. You know what I mean? Like, this, just talk to the professionals, the people who are in it every day.
100%. I saw, actually, you were at the event. I was just about to talk about my own event where Ryan Grant put up that slide, right? Like, if you bought in 2015 and you just looked at headlines, right? I think it was something like a $300,000 house. Over the course of the next, 7, 8 years, you missed out on $222,000 worth of appreciation because every single headline was just screaming, bubble, bad time to buy a house, home values are going to come down. And in the past, I think it's out of the last 80 plus years, there's been only like 5 or 6 negative years. And 2008, right? Like, we had a bunch in a row.
Right.
So it's like, if you're,
Well, it's just like the stock market. You don't lose unless you sell. So if you bought, even if your value comes down a little bit, it's going to come back up. Just don't sell it. And that's
exactly.
where, you know what I mean? Like, that's where
And
people,
I heard a lot of, actually, Ryan, he even mentioned that his dad was asking him, like, he was convinced back then, he was convinced he needed to, get rid of the property. And his dad's like, why? Can you afford it? And he's like, yeah, but everything you're hearing. And it's like, just keep it. Yeah. A lot of people didn't do that, unfortunately. So
well, that's the thing too.
get better information.
Yeah, education. Just talk to the expert, get educated, because you don't know what you don't know.
There you go. Home ownership mastery. Let's do it. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren, hang out 2 seconds after I stop this. But for anybody listening, we really appreciate you making it this far, especially if you did. Share this with somebody else who would get value from it. Like it, leave a comment, and we appreciate you guys. We'll see you in the next video.